Great. Well, welcome everyone. Good evening. I'm Meg Mall, Executive Director of Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions. Thank you for joining us for our second webinar in our Net Zero series. The FACTS Net Zero program is a track within our Tree of Life program, which calls on faith communities to make a commitment and also to take action to achieve net zero carbon emissions on their faith campuses by 2050. To get there, action in the next decade to cut emissions in half is necessary. Our first webinar last month went through our net zero program and the 6 steps we ask of faith communities. First, make a commitment. Second, organize your community. Third, set a reduction goal. Fourth, make a plan. Fifth, measure and track progress. And then lastly, recognize and celebrate. The recording slides in our handbook for net zero are all available on our website at faithforclimate.org under programs, Tree of Life, Net Zero track, and I'm happy to send that around afterwards as well. Tonight, we're really excited to showcase a local faith community that is a leader in becoming a net zero faith community, Rock Spring United Church of Christ. Reverend Laura Martin and Jerry Hartz will take us through their decision-making process within their congregation and demonstrate the savings they will realize as they move to net zero. You'll have an opportunity for questions at the end. We ask that you please stay muted as they present. And now I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guests and invite them to take over. So Laura Martin is Associate Pastor at Rock Spring United Church of Christ, and she's the co-leader of their Green Accelerator project, which you will learn more about. Jerry Hartz is a co-leader of the Green Accelerator project, along with Laura. They created Net Zero along with their board, their church. In his day job, Jerry is the Director of Government Relations and Communications at the National Democratic Institute, which does democracy promotion in 70 countries around the world. Jerry and Laura, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Meg, to you and to FACTS for hosting this and just giving us this opportunity to get to talk together tonight. And welcome to everybody, including we have a couple other people from Rock Spring on here. So it's nice to see you with us, and certainly feel free to add as appropriate as we go through this. Jerry and I just want to take maybe 20 minutes to go through the background so that we can allow a lot of time for questions and figure out what's most relevant to you. But I just wanted to frame, first of all, that Rock Spring has had a long-standing environmental commitment, and that's something that was true before I was even serving at the church. I've been there as an intern since I started as an intern in 2012 and then on staff in 2015. And so I just want to hold up the legacy of people who were there ahead of me and the phenomenal work that happened that really laid the groundwork for us establishing this program that we call the Green Accelerator program, or GAP. Really launching that in 2015, supported the congregation, getting voted on in 2016 as part of an intentional big mission effort at our church. And what was happening is we were doing a capital campaign, and we wanted to set aside a portion of that funding to live out the church's mission in the world. And we ended up focusing on 2 areas, environment and refugees. And within the environmental realm, we created this GAP, which really functions with 3 areas of focus. One being on what can each of us do in our own lives and in our own homes to live in more sustainable ways. 2, to partner with organizations, including Solar Village Project in India and Puerto Rico, to support some innovative projects that bring solar there. And then 3rd, what can we do on our church's own campus to green our own campus and live out our commitments there? And so all of that laid the groundwork for this conversation that we had with energy audits and beyond. And so I'm going to pull up some slides and Jerry will talk through those.
Great. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Meg. Hello, everybody. So I think the top takeaway message I want you to hear is that this is not a story of doom and gloom. It is easy to get depressed with the headlines, but we're here to tell you that you can make a huge difference. Not only can you make a huge difference in terms of climate impact, but you can make a huge difference in terms of your pocketbook. And I will, before we go through the slides, I will tell you a little bit about my journey to get to this project. So I was lucky enough to go to Antarctica and Great Barrier Reef in 2008 on a congressional delegation by Speaker Pelosi. And I was amazed with what I heard. I knew what we all have heard since, that we don't have much time. I came back pretty shaken. And I sat by Speaker Pelosi's side, who I worked for at that time, and counted the votes for the cap and trade bill in 2009. She did an amazing job in 10 days of taking a vote with 110 people from the environmental community to 221 or whatever it was on final passage. But it dead ended in the Senate and we couldn't get it through in terms of law. I began to realize, and my oldest daughter, Evelyn, has taught me some of this, that we can't always do everything through government. We certainly can try, but there's a lot of opportunity in our personal lives and in the private sector to do great things. And so I began to sort of work on this in a way that was not thinking that the government could solve the problem, which is what people first think. It's definitely a part of the issue, but that we can make a huge difference in our own personal lives. And so that's how we got to the Green Accelerator project that Laura mentioned, and how we got to net zero as the crown jewel of that Green Accelerator project. So let's just start and talk about net zero. I'm sure you already understand this, but we basically told our congregation that net zero is the gold standard to reach combat climate change, that we, with solar panels and energy reduction, could actually meet most of our needs on site and even give back to the grid. That probably is not going to the ultimate way we solve this. But Washington, D.C., they want to be net zero by 2050. We can do it starting as soon as we finish this year with this project. Next slide. So the first thing that we did, I think it was in 2018, we hired mechanical engineers and consultants to do an ASHRAE study. And we actually did 2 versions of this, and it's a very instructive thing. They come in and they see, what is your baseline energy needs? What do you spend now? What are the gaps in terms of your efficiencies, insulation, windows, other things? We found from that ASHRAE 2 study, and by the way, that cost $10,000, that 70% of our utility costs, 70%, were due to excessive heating and cooling from inadequate insulation. That's probably not surprising when you think about physics. Hot air rises, cold air drops. And so what's over our head is really, really important. Over the choir room, which is just behind the sanctuary, a lot of times over the years, people had moved insulation around and rewired. There literally was no insulation above that choir room other than the drop ceiling. So we were heating and cooling air going straight outdoors. We have a huge campus, 4 buildings, lights burn at night. The head minister, Kathy, has to go over and turn them off with her husband late at night. We have rooms that are heated and cooled with no one present. We have single pane windows without blinds that have R2, like twice as insulative as the outdoors. It's basically being outdoors practically. And we also found that we have a large sloped roof that was perfect for solar panels. So right now, Rock Spring annually is spending $37,643 per year on those kinds of inefficiencies. Next slide. So where we can go with net zero, we all know this. We read it every day and it shocks us. We have very little time to correct. The UN scientists talk about 10 years. We're already wasting enormous sums on excessive utility bills. Energy efficiency upgrades are a cost-saving investment. They not only save us money in our pocket, and we'll come back to that again and again in this presentation, but they help save the planet. And we can become, through this, a model for communities. We can be the first net zero church in Arlington, the first in Virginia, one of the first in the nation, and we can become a green church through that process. So there are all kinds of benefits from that, not only in terms of, the planet, our pocketbooks, but who we are as a faith community. Next slide. So what we found with the ASHRAE 2 study, these numbers are a little different as we've gone forward, but this is the gist. If we do all the insulation, all the efficiency we could probably drop that $37,643 to about $11,000. With the solar panels, we could drop it close to $5,000 per year. We decided to do all of it. Next slide. So you can see here the baskets. Energy improvements include insulation. They include mechanical turning off and on of lights, heating and air conditioning. In other words, those rooms that would be heated and cooled without anybody there would be automatically adjusted. The technology has moved forward very far. We're considering doing some replacement of those single pane windows. The sanctuary is quite expensive to do that, as you can imagine, on a 100-year-old church. The solar panels are probably going up as we speak. We have already replaced the roof. It had come to the end of its life. So all of the shingles had to be put in. We got rid of the skylights that were big energy wasters as part of that. And the solar panels are going up as we speak. We have a parsonage that's actually a 5th building that's very inefficient. We wanted to make sure that was taken care of. Our head minister, Kathy, said that she and Dale were having dinner one night and she looked and Dale's hair was moving in the wind that was coming through. And then we added some contingency costs because you can never hit the mark exactly. Next slide. So when you put it all together, think about it this way. On our current path, and this assumes no increase for energy costs, and I gotta believe with what we're facing, there's going to be an increase with energy costs. We pay $37,643 annually, which over 20 years would be $752,681. With the efficiency and the upgrades that cost $405,000 and the extra utilities every year annually, comparatively, we'll be spending a little over $500,000 in that same time period with the efficiencies that we're undertaking. So yes, there is an upfront investment. There is an upfront cost. We can't deny that, but I will tell you as an example, in 2 homes that I've lived in, I spent $4,000 to put insulation in the roof to R60, which is the net zero standard for homes. In both instances, in 2.5 years, I got full payback. And right now I'm saving money. In my home that I sit in right now, the air conditioning and the heating really don't run spring or fall. In the summertime, I had $450 cooling bills that dropped to $150. In the wintertime, I'm at $100, in terms of natural gas. And I would say one other thing that's not on the slide deck that we did very early on is to buy 100% green energy. So however the numbers come out, we are purchasing wind, solar, biomass, and hydroelectric from Dominion Power, and that will cover whatever we miss in terms of these investments. So with that, Laura, anything else I missed that you want to add before we go to questions?
Yeah, I wanted to emphasize Jerry and his role really in being a catalyst and a leader. And then Peter Geiger, the chair of our property board, couldn't be with us tonight, but it was to emphasize that this was a whole team. This was not any one person who was carrying this, and how collaborative and how important that will be for any faith community, that there's a team so that different people can pick up different aspects of this. And we would love to just take questions that you have.
Thank you both, Laura and Jerry. We wanted to allow for as much time as possible for questions. So all of you, you're welcome to enter your question into the chat, or you can also unmute yourself and just go ahead and speak your question. We'll be casual. Questions for Jerry and Laura?
Tom.
Yes, this is Tom O'Reilly. I'm with the Unitarian Church in Arlington. and we're just starting up a journey with facts. We've got some buy-in there. We've got a lot of good stuff down there. We haven't gone solar, et cetera. But my question has to do with your solar. And did you purchase that? Did you do a power purchase agreement? How did that work out for you?
We purchased the panels. We were very fortunate, and we can talk a little bit about the financing. We looked at CPACE. Some of you may be familiar with that. It's a commercial property agreement. They basically allow you to borrow against your equity. But it was like 5, 6, 7%.
Right.
And we have a big endowment, and we were able to borrow with the approval of the finance board and church council at 3%. And so it just made a lot of sense for us to go that way in comparative cost. Other churches may not be so fortunate as to have that, but it made sense for us.
I'm curious about power purchase agreements and whether that was part of the consideration.
No, because we don't have enough capacity with the roofs that we have to ever truly generate enough to go back on the grid.
The financing.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And they did, the person who was handling the estimates did explore and have conversations with several different groups before selecting ultimately who we wanted the partner to be for solar.
I'd like to ask a question. Who did your energy audit, and how did you go about selecting that firm?
Laura?
I will pull up the name. I'll need to get the name. We can share all of that with you, but we selected them because all of this started when I had an initial conversation with CPACE as we were exploring financing there. And so they had some recommended places to start, some names. And then what we did is we called up, we had meetings, and we did a walkthrough. This, of course, was all prior to COVID. And we did walkthrough with 3 different companies, and then ultimately decided who to go with for the first part and then who to go with for the energy audit. So all of that information, if any of you want to know that, we can share who we ended up choosing for that, which does not necessarily mean like some of this, we're not saying that this is going to be the best company to do like an ASHRAE study for you. It's who we ended up using.
Thank you.
I see a question in the chat too from Jean Wright about geothermal. I never heard that be brought up. Did you, Jerry?
No, and our church campus, so geothermal, you probably know, either has, you go deep if you don't have much property with loops that, feed into your system, or you go flat with a big field. In either instance, we have a daycare center that uses one of the buildings, and there's a big playground. So our biggest space to do geothermal would have been disruptive to the campus. So, and it's hard in an urban area unless you have a lot of space to kind of do that. It would be beautiful if we could, but I don't think it's practical given our location.
And we can also just mention along the way, we did put in rain gardens, and there were some other environmental considerations that were used even when we were doing the campus renewal project that I mentioned in 2017. What's the size of our congregation? We have about 550 members. Of course, when you're meeting virtually, that's a little bit of a question, what it means to have a membership now, but around 550. So if you're currently installing solar, Sue asked what we would recommend following installing solar. So for us, as we mentioned in the PowerPoint, honestly, the biggest savings is putting insulation in so that we could stop heating and cooling the outside. There was a hole in the choir room. So literally we were affecting the air right outside the choir room, and just improvements that needed to be made in insulation and attics and crawl spaces and some other spaces like that. So for us, that was the next best step. But I think doing some kind of energy audit to be able to get that feedback makes a lot of sense. Jerry, did you want to add to that?
No, that's perfect.
Other questions?
And as Jerry mentioned, he also did this work in 2 houses that he's owned. So if you're also looking to or thinking about things in your own homes, I would just put in a plug that he's great to talk to about that.
Just wondering about air infiltration. Did you do a blower door test on the structure? And did you take special measures to avoid air infiltration aside from the insulation?
I was not there for the X-ray testing. Were you, Laura? I assume that they did that.
Yeah, that's a more technical question. I'm happy to put my email in the chat and I can follow up with their property person. You feel free to write me and we can find that out. Jean is asking oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, there were 2 steps to this, and Laura alluded to it. We already had done a campus renewal because of the age of the buildings. And that happened in, what was it, 2015, Laura? Where we started our mission projects then after that. So we had already done a fair amount of just the simple stuff, the weatherization, the replacement of doors, those kinds of things. But we hadn't really gotten as far along as what net zero thinking was to put, and we just had a limited budget to do all the things that you would do if you were to start from scratch and think this was the main goal. So this is kind of phase 2 of the campus renewal, if you will.
So I see Jean was asking how we brought the majority of the congregation on board. So the slides you saw tonight, we shared those at some listening sessions that we had in the fall. And we've talked about this building and again, being addressed, Earth Day, being celebrated, preached on regularly, speakers, book discussions, like the environmental commitment, I would say, is baked into the church. So that's there and it's talked about. We've had an energy fair and other hands-on activities. And so in the fall, we had these listening sessions where we presented exactly this kind of information and took questions, and it ended up passing with 97% support. And I think that was because it really lined up with our values. Climate change is one of the justice, equity, and other issues of our time that it's not optional to respond as people of faith. It is mandated. And so combining that with the chance to do so in a way that made financial sense at the church was really, again, there was very little debate on it. There was just a lot of support and people just asking technical questions related to that.
And having people like the ASHRAE 2 engineers present as part of these listening sessions, having the Arlington CPACE person come and say, we've looked at this is real. We think you can achieve these energy savings. Here's what we could offer in terms of financing. I mean, these are all things that, our congregations are highly educated and filled with, lawyers, accountants, and former government officials. And so it's important that, it's not just what's in our hearts, but, we back it up with science. And I think that's an important thing to build in. And we did a good job of that all the way through.
I'll second.
And I also would say,
Jerry, I'll just jump in for a second. I'm part of Rock Spring, but not involved in this whole process as it was developing. But I think Laura and Jerry did a really good job of the kind of logic that you're seeing laid out here tonight, where there was a compelling social, moral reason for some of this, but that it also in dollars and cents made a great deal of sense for the church to be looking at and going forward. It was very well done process. They brought a lot of people in that might not have been either enthusiastic or even in favor. And I think the fact that it was as overwhelming a vote at the end is due to being really well organized and having their ducks in a row.
Thank you.
Doug.
There's a question about, did you or will you upgrade your lighting?
Yes, we have a wonderful person, John, who works at the church, and
As a volunteer.
As a volunteer, and he had already switched a lot of our lighting to LEDs, which are 80% savings on fluorescent bulbs, and or regular incandescent, and probably 2/3 more efficient than even fluorescent. So we'd already done that. But yes, I think the trick for us now, and this is sort of like the next phase of this, we're putting the insulation in, we're getting the solar in. But what we'd really like to do is this sort of electronic monitoring that actually turns, light bulbs off, heating off, cooling off when nobody's in the room for 20 minutes or something like that. And we're still exploring that, and the budget's there, but that's kind of the next phase.
The question on the power purchase agreement. Did you start out with that? Was that your first step?
Well, I think it was pretty clear we just couldn't. There just wasn't enough solar capacity to do that. I mean, it just wasn't really in the cards for us. It probably depends on your buildings and all of that kind of stuff. I would say that the combination of doing as much solar as you can and having 100% green energy purchase is really the sweet spot. That's what, it's easy right now. You can flip the switch, call Dominion if you haven't already done so as a congregation, and say, whatever it is, a few cents more a kilowatt hour, we want green energy. That doesn't mean the electrons coming into your church are green energy, but it means that you're forcing Dominion to go purchase, either create or purchase good stuff instead of fossil fuels.
One question.
That was really the first step.
Yeah. Is there an option that doesn't involve biomass?
The last I looked at Dominion, it's been a while, that was still in there, but I can't tell you. I mean, you don't have to do it just with Dominion. There are other power source agreements that you can do to purchase 100% green energy. It was simple to do it through Dominion. And we probably did that, Laura, 4 years ago?
Yeah, at least 4 years ago. It's been a while now. And I see there was a question from Bob Robinson about how do we ensure that the source of the energy was actually derived from renewable sources. And I would say it's that what Jerry is saying is we're telling them this is what they need to do. And we understand that there might not be a one-to-one correlation, but we're saying we're investing in their green energy through it. Do you want to say more to that, Jerry?
Yeah, and I did a lot of research because I started this back when Dominion first created maybe 2008, 2009 in my own home. This was blessed by DOE under Obama. This is a real program. This means that, again, they can't promise the electrons going into your home are green, but they have to match what you use with real green purchase of energy. So overall, as a net, if you will, quote unquote, it's green.
Any plans for EV charging? John wants to know. I actually looked into that a little bit. Like, could we is that something we could get a grant for? It's been a while. That will be something else for us to, I think, come back to and explore, especially if we can find a funding source or a grant for that would make sense.
Have you followed up with Energy Star appliances?
You
Well,
mean
again,
for EV charging?
No, not just EV, but for whatever it is you may have in the way.
Oh yeah, we have Energy Star appliances. Yes, that was part of the study, and that's something that, again, prior to me even being there in 2012, there had already been an energy audit done, and so a lot of those changes were already made. Sue is asking about part of the program encouraging people to make changes at home. How do we do that? And I have to see if Carolyn is still on here. I want to shout out Carolyn Rapp, one of our members. She actually created a green bingo game for us. We have various ways. There was actually a guide that we made and we gave to people. There was a lot of Jerry's wisdom of this is how you can get started at home making these energy improvements. We had an energy fair with different commitments, with the LED Light Lab, with a lot of hands-on tangible, here's what you can do. Go ride in a Tesla, a variety of things. And then Carolyn, to make this fun and engaging, created these green bingo pieces where the idea is take this home and then mark them off and see who can get bingo. And we could celebrate that in the church as well.
Laura, I'm here, but something happened to my video and I cannot get my picture back on. And I have my green bingo here to show, but I can't. So,
Well, Mary Ruth Phillips would love for you to share it. So we'll have to,
okay.
we have it electronically. We'll have to get that to her.
Yeah. Okay.
And Mary, if you could just email me also, please. I put my email in the chat. We can get that. Jean, thank you for your suggestion about Daniel's Run Peace Church having EV stations. I'll make a note of that.
There was a question about how long the overall process has taken. You spoke to that a little.
It took longer than I would have liked, but you know, it ended up with a 97% vote in January, right? So we created the ideas in 2015, 2016 for the Green Accelerator project. We probably didn't really get started to the net zero project, Laura, I think until 2018 is what I want to think. In terms of the fall, maybe we did the first ASHRAE. And then we started to really put the plan together in early 2019 and present it to the church starting in like even January. And the listening sessions in 2020 and the vote in 2021. That's probably a reasonable timeline, right?
Yeah, we ended up having the final vote in the fall of 2020, right? Yes, and again, we had listening sessions prior to COVID as well, different pieces along the way, and we showed people photographs, even more detail than you've seen, right? We showed them the photo of the hole that showed that the air was escaping the building, and definitely brought people along and used congregational meetings or had additional meetings where we shared this. And then some of these studies took a while, right? Like one of the ASHRAE studies, they wanted to monitor everything for 30 to 45 days. But we share the commitment to, if you're going to be on the journey and you want it done right and you want it done well, to give yourself to that. We didn't want to take shortcuts along the way.
You have an estimate of the total cost of all that you've done per square foot?
Oh, I don't, per square foot, no. It's like 400,000 for 4 buildings. Well, the parsonage is the 5th, but 4 large buildings, the sanctuary, Hunter Hall, Carpenter Hall, and neighborhood house.
But any estimate of do you have an idea of what the square footage of those 4 buildings might be? Because it might give us some sense of a rough estimate of cost for our rather modest building.
I just don't have that. You, Laura?
I don't. The person we referenced with the lights, he could tell you that off the top of his head, I'm sure, but I don't. Again, if you want to email me with any specific questions like that, we will share. I saw the notes about Green Bingo. So what I'll do is I'll make sure Meg can also get the Green Bingo piece and share that with all of you as well. Tom, did you want to speak to the power piece?
Yeah. Well, one distinct, so to Fred's question, is that that will also really vary based on what work needs to be done at your particular building. I mean, the cost were really baked into your particular situation on your faith community. So the costs are going to be hugely variant from one property to the next.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for you, if I can jump in again. I have lots of questions, and I want to talk to Laura and Meg and Jerry in the future, but not on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned one of the 3 legs that you started out with was the outreach to social justice and to other projects worldwide, actually. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Sure, Jerry, Solar Village.
Sure. Yeah, it's one of my favorite organizations in the entire world. So a Tacoma Park couple, and she's of Indian heritage. They went on their honeymoon trip to North India, and they went out into the rural areas, the untouchable areas. And he is a engineer at University of Maryland, and he has a lot of expertise in solar. And he was stunned at what he saw in terms of the poverty and the use of kerosene lanterns, and just thinking, this is fixable. This is not, we don't have to have people live this way. So when I was trying to, put this all together in terms of the Green Accelerator project with Laura and others, I definitely felt there needed to be an international component about climate change. We have to help the developing world leapfrog fossil fuels. And everybody thinks India is a developed country, and Modi likes to say that there's electricity to every village. Well, that just isn't really the case. It may get to the outskirts of those villages, but it doesn't get to the households in those villages. And there are terrible consequences from kerosene lanterns. There's lung cancer, burns with children, costs, tuberculosis and other things. So Solar Village Project, I found them online. They were local, and I was just blown away by their mission. So for like as little as $10, you can get a solar lantern, and a kid can get 8 hours of reading time at night. You can get a plug-in for a cell phone charger plug-in in that same lantern. So the woman who is the domicile is her, the home is her domicile. She suddenly doesn't have to walk to charge her cell phone. She can open up entrepreneurial opportunities. And in one fell swoop, Solar Village Project changes the world in a rural village. So we thought this is a win. And I'm actually the vice president of the board of Solar Village, but the church has been probably its biggest contributor. I would say 40 to 50% of the funds for Solar Village come from Rock Spring.
Wow.
And really exciting, just prior to COVID in February of 2020, Jerry and a dozen others from our church went to Puerto Rico and installed solar there on community centers, which were actually used to care for people with COVID. I mean, the whole idea was solar for hurricane recovery and making community centers a hub for hurricane relief, and it turned out to be useful during COVID as well. But we really appreciate having that closer focus. And Joe is very willing to come and talk to faith communities. We did a Zoom with him on Epiphany to make the connection of light, solar, and he spoke to our congregation. And people ask great questions, right? Like, could they explore doing a project at Navajo Nation? And he said, absolutely. It's all in getting the funding, getting the connection, getting the partnership. But there is so much potential for them to grow and do more, including even within the US.
Any other questions?
Tom had brought up Arcadia. Did you want to say anything about that, Tom?
Arcadia Power is an outfit they're based out of DC. And what they do is they sell, they do the same thing that Dominion Power does with its green energy program, except that what they sell is they sell RECs for wind farms and solar farms. And that's all they have. And you buy in, when you sign up with their program, that's what you're buying. You're buying wind power and or solar power. There's a couple different programs in there about what mix you can get. It doesn't cost a whole lot more. I think it's actually cheaper than Dominion. And it certainly does not have some of the issues that Dominion's green power program has, including biomass and using 100-year-old hydropower as their main source, pieces like that. So it's really something interesting. We've been members for years. They're now doing a community solar work, which is something which has just been allowed in Virginia. And that'll be real interesting to see how that plays out. So that the people who have the problem with Arlington and solar is trees. So, but if you can buy into community solar, you can be part of a solar farm without having to chop all your trees down. But anyway, that's what we'll say. We were members until I put solar on the roof, and now I can't be a member because of net metering. So
Thank you, Tom. That's let's see. I don't think we've had Jerry put his email in the chat, so he can also do that. Well, and I'll just note again, as Jerry said, he has another whole full-time job preserving democracy, but you can tell he has a great passion to do all of this in his free time.
While some of you are perhaps thinking of additional questions, I'll just fill the space here for a minute and make a plug. And we were chatting before we started this webinar, and I think the message we all want to convey is that there's really no need to wait. So if you can take anything away from this, just get started. And I hope that you've taken away some pieces on how to do that. And one piece, if you're still on the fence, I highly recommend, and this is it's the third step in our net zero program, is to benchmark your property. You don't need any buy-in from your community, to do this. You gather up your utility bills and you enter it in, and you can just get a baseline understanding of what is going on your energy use in your facility. And that might be your launching point. So FACS is partnered with this program called SEEK that is out of Arizona State University, and they have students that will work with your members of your faith community to help you benchmark in the EPA's Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So it's a free resource available to you. I'm going to make that information available to all of you as well. And we're putting a challenge out there to have 25 faith communities in Northern Virginia benchmark their properties by Earth Day. So I challenge you to participate and get your property benchmarked.
Jerry, did you want to address Tom's question in chat?
Sure. For some reason, I'm not able to send any chats, but yes, we will get as close as we can through the efficiencies and the solar to net zero. It will not be all the way. It's just not possible. However, when we factor in the 100% green energy, now again, I'm not talking about natural gas usage. We do have 95% energy efficient furnaces and such, but anything that's electrically related, between what we can accomplish with this project and and the 100% green energy purchase, we're gonna be there. I just think it's such a great thing in terms of the community, because I will tell you that as we thought about this project, I think actually the net zero project for the church is the camel's nose under the tent. What really matters is what each of us do in our homes on the screen. And, this is a way to educate a whole group of 550 people in a congregation that this isn't nearly as unsolvable as hard as I thought it was. We just have to think differently. And that's what I would like everybody to take away. There's no gloom and doom, like I said, there's only can do.
Great. Well, we're so glad to be with everybody, and certainly the conversation isn't over tonight. We left our information, and I'll be sending Meg the green bingo, which seems very popular, and we're happy to be supports, cheerleaders, problem solvers, whatever else along your journey.
Thank you so much, Laura and Jerry. Definitely, you'll receive all these materials through fax. I'm able to send those all to you, and I hope that you all will consider signing up to participate in our Internet Zero program and joining Rock Spring UCC on this journey. We really are stronger when we do this all together, and we have people to learn from. So, and we're so grateful for the willingness to share among this community. So with that said, I think we'll wrap, and have a good evening, everyone. And thank you so much again.
Thank you very much. It's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Alrighty, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.